The immortal John Hancock here, and today I'm answering this question. What do I think was the best year for video game releases? And so, this question is going to vary from person to person. I've been wanting to do this video for a while. There's so many great years and time periods of video game history, and this question can be answered many different ways, and lots of people are going to have different answers, and I'm going to explain mine. And I did have a runner-up year as well, and I'm going to explain that. First and foremost, I think there's a lot of factors that determine what year someone chooses as their favorite year for game releases. And so first and foremost, age. What time period did you grow up in? Did you grow up in the very early days where there was Pongs and early arcade machines? Or the golden age, where there's arcades everywhere, even at laundromats, and did you get to experience that? Or did you grow up with an Atari in your house? Or were you younger and grew up with a PlayStation 2? Or even you're brand new to the gaming, collecting and gaming, and you're enjoying the Switch and you think it can't be any better than this. So I'm going to jump right in and explain that, my age does determine my answer a little bit. I think awareness and exposure, I've got to experience lots of different consoles and got to play on original hardware, and so that to me, and then researching these consoles and games and finding out when they came out, that was pretty fun too. I've read several books about video game history. Phoenix 4 is still my favorite video game book where I get a lot of my information. There's also another one that's pretty good, and it's 1001 Games to Play Before You Die. That was a fun read, and actually it helped me with my answer today. So alright, so there's a lot of factors to consider when answering this question. I talked about a few. What makes a good game? There's lots of different preferences that people enjoy, and certain time periods of game history provided those games more than others, and so that's an issue. Also, I think the big one too is, what do you prefer when you play games, 2D versus 3D? So I thought about this question, and my actual response is 1993. And you're probably wondering, well, why 1993? I could give you 100 reasons, and I'm going to explain why I think 1993 was, I think, the best year for video game releases and just video games in general. The first and foremost reason why was there was such a wide variety of video games across several platforms that were still viable in 1993. The 90s was an awesome time for video games, and it didn't matter what platform you had so many choices. And so first and foremost, the Nintendo was still around. Even in 1993, it was on its last breath, but Kirby's Adventure was being released. That's an amazing game, and it still holds up today. There was Battletoads and Double Dragon. Those two right there are solid releases for the Nintendo Entertainment System. Game Boy, which ironically enough had Link's Awakening, which was an amazing Legend of Zelda game. And I remember playing that back in the day. I didn't get it in 1993. I think I got it later, and I got the Game Boy Color version, but it was fantastic. And I think that's a game that's held up, and a lot of the releases that I'm talking about are ones that I would still play today. There's several others that were released in 1993, but I'm really just bringing up the ones that came out in 1993 that I think hold up today and games I still play. Game Gear was still out in the market, and even though the Game Gear wasn't the best, I had a Game Gear back in the day and actually purchased NBA Jam. It didn't look great, and it was inferior to the other ports, but it didn't matter to me. I played it. NBA Jam came out on several platforms, and I actually played the Game Gear one the most. There was other releases, Mortal Kombat and Battletoads as well for the Game Gear. I did get Mortal Kombat for it, even though it wasn't that good. In 1993, the Turbo Duo was still out in the market, and for people that don't know, the Turbo Duo is a combination of the TurboGrafx 16 and the CD unit into a sleek design, and it was a fantastic machine. It didn't sell too well in the States, but it had some of its big heavy hitters come out in 1993. They had Bonk 3, Beyond Shadowgate, Cotton, Dungeon Explorer 2, Exile, and Magical Chase. And so it was kind of the last hurrah for the Turbo Duo and TurboGrafx 16 for that year. I remember several games being clearance out of Toys R Us when Toys R Us was still around. Super Nintendo was hitting its stride in 1993. It came out with Star Fox, it came out with Super Mario All-Stars, it came out with Secret of Mana, Mega Man X, Aladdin, and there's people going to like the Aladdin on Super Nintendo versus Genesis. I like the Genesis one better. They both came out in 1993. NBA Jam, those just to name a few. There was a lot of platform and sports titles come out, but those are some of the big games that came out that year that really solidified the Super Nintendo as a powerhouse and really demonstrated its graphic capabilities. I remember playing Star Fox for the first time, and back in the day, not when it came out, a little bit later, but it was just mind-blowing, the graphics that it had. Sega Genesis, I think 1993 was one of its best years. Sega Genesis, when Aladdin came out, I feel that really showed, hey, we don't have to be a copycat of Super Nintendo. We can be our own device and really demonstrate the power of the Sega Genesis. I really, really enjoyed Aladdin on the Sega Genesis. It was just a fantastic game. Gunstar Heroes, Echo the Dolphin, Zombies Ate My Neighbors, that was actually released on both. There also was Mutant League Football, Shining Force, Subterranea. There was so many other releases. Gauntlet 4, Shinobi 3. I mean, if you look at the Genesis library, 1993 was one of the best years. It just was absolutely fantastic. It was really competing against the Super Nintendo head-and-head. And, for me, I was gaming quite a bit of Sega Genesis in 1993, so I remember several of these games. I remember renting a lot of them, not owning many of them. Gauntlet 4 for sure, though. That was a fantastic game. Sega CD. Sega CD's biggest release was Sonic CD. Fantastic release, came out in 1993. It had some other releases, Final Fight, Lunar Silver Star, and Terminator. Terminator is actually fantastic on the Sega CD. Just another add-on that was really coming to its age in 1993. The Jaguar's out, but it really hadn't started its main releases, so it wasn't a good time in 1993 to get a Jaguar. It really was later on that it started to get some decent titles. But the 3DO was also on the market, and so you could play Star Control 2 in 1993, which blew my mind. I actually went to a rental store and was playing it by the hour in Redding, California, and got to experience Star Control 2. And so there's a lot of platforms. The Lynx had many releases come out in 1993. I do believe Warbirds came out. So the Lynx was on the market. So think about all these platforms, all these consoles and handhelds that were on the market that you could go to a store and purchase. That's amazing. Let's not forget the two big platforms, though, arcade and PC. And oh boy. So we'll first start with arcade. And the arcade had Samurai Showdown, one of the classics of Neo Geo games. Played a ton of Samurai Showdown in the arcades. Just an absolute fantastic game. You had Ridge Racer, Virtua Fighter, Mortal Kombat 2. I remember that in the arcades and the lines of people gathered around playing that. It's just, to me, Mortal Kombat 2 is one of my favorite classic Mortal Kombat games to play. I still enjoy playing that. Daytona USA had several racing games coming out. But the big platform, I think, for 1993, and the consoles did great, and the handhelds did great, was really PC gaming. It was such a great time to get into PC gaming. It was a time that actually I was a PC gamer at the time, and I had a Packard Bell 486. I mean, it wasn't a great computer, but it did its job, and it ran the games that I needed to play. And some of the big releases for PC, and there was a ton of PC games coming out in 1993. All fantastic. SimCity 2000, Doom, Myst, Master of Orion, X-Wing, Seventh Guest, Maniac Mansion 2, Syndicate, Return to Zork. Of all those, though, hands down, I played X-Wing more than any of them. I bought the, I think there was a pack in with the Flight Stick Pro. I think it was X-Wing. I don't think it was TIE Fighter. But I remember playing X-Wing, you know, and playing that a lot. Fantastic game, but PC gaming at this time was just amazing. And I just really enjoyed this time period. So many great releases. You know, there's other consoles that came out that I didn't have exposure to at the time. The Pioneer Laser Active was super expensive, and you know, out of the United States, you had FM Towns Marty. You probably had some other things too. So that's my opinion. What I think is the best year in game releases was 1993. The runner-up actually was 1991. And, you know, the actual reason why I chose 1993 over 1991, I think there was some awesome console releases in 1991, but actually the PC releases in 1993 gave me the edge, and the reason why I chose 1993 is what I think was the best year for video game releases. So I want to know your answer. What do you think was the best year for video game releases? Comment below. I'd love to hear from you. This was a fun question to answer. I want to thank everybody for the ongoing support. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, click the bell to make sure you get notified when new videos are uploaded. You folks are wonderful and beautiful. Thank you so much. This is the Immortal John Hancock. You take care.